Will Florida State have a true number one wide receiver this season? And if they do, who is it?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. You can find us wherever you get your podcast for free and on YouTube. Please like and share this podcast and comment when you can. This show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today and get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. So this is what we're going to do. I'm trying to narrow it down and figure out, okay, who is going to be the number one wide receiver for the Florida State Seminoles in 2024? Is there going to be one? It's not a lock. Sometimes it's a system where everybody's balanced. Every now and then that happens. The Noles had two dominant guys last year in Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, and they also had Hykeem out at tight end. I mean, they had really, really special players that they've all moved on to the National Football League. That doesn't mean there isn't talent, and it doesn't mean there isn't a really interesting debate, and that's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to name off 4 different guys that I think could be that player. I'm just going to look at it from a perspective with each one. It's like I start over, if you will. I'm going to name why I think that person could be the number one receiver this year and possibly beyond in the case of one of the players. And I'm going to ask you at the end of all 4 of these, which one you would pick, or would it be somebody else? Please comment on YouTube, etc., and let's talk about it, because this is a big deal. If Florida State can definitively have that guy where you have to know where he's at on every freaking single snap, it changes your play calls as a defense. It changes your personnel. It changes how much you blitz. It changes how much you really try to stuff the run. It is important to have a dominant receiver in today's college football world. These are the 4 that I think have the best chance to be that guy, and there's no particular order here. I'm just going to start with Hykeem Williams and move through. So, again, just comment at the end of the show. Let me know what you think. Number 1, Hykeem Williams, wide receiver, sophomore, Stranahan High School, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He was a kid that I knew the most out of these, and watching him in high school was a lot of fun. Whether it was a 7-on-7 tournament, watching his film, whatever it is, he makes special catches, and he makes a lot of catches down the field against guys that could really run. Always noticed about that. Well, that translated to the field at Florida State last year in some snippets. Learning the playbook, playing at the college level, it's different. But when he took off, yeah, there's no doubt. Hykeem Williams is a tremendous football player, and once he gets his feet under him and he feels comfortable, and I mean truly comfortable, and that's all about the playbook. There is nothing physical there. It's above the shoulders. He can be dynamic. Will he be that guy this year? I don't know. He could be the number one. I think he's probably long-term has the most upside of any receiver on the roster. But we're just talking about 2024. First off, a little bit, I'll talk about the extra bonus with him if he's the number one guy in a minute. But here are the other things that I think he can do. But at his size, he's over 200 pounds. He can help you in the run game as a blocker. He's getting bigger and stronger. This was his first year in the offseason weight conditioning program. So you're not only getting a home run threat with speed and length and height, he's 6'3", you're talking about a guy that has the ability to help you in the run game, and Florida State does a great job of getting the ball to the perimeter. If your receivers don't block, if your tight ends don't block, run game doesn't work. He has to prove he can do that play after play, consistency. He also has to do one other thing, show he can run the route tree within the offensive scheme. I know I'm kind of repeating myself here, but it's everything. Either you know the playbook and the coaches, in their opinion, no offense to Hykeem or anybody else, in their opinion, feel you are ready to do it, you're not going to play that much. That's just how college football works. And I'm going to say something that I say all the time, and I will probably take this to my grave. There are no more stubborn people on planet Earth than college football coaches. I'm looking at Norvell. I'm looking at everybody. They are anal about these kinds of things, and they don't often, shall we say, go to the side and give a guy an extra little nudge to get out there and play just because they have raw talent. It's just how coaches are. It's not a Florida State thing. That's across the board. So how much Hykeem learns above his shoulders could dictate whether or not he ends up being the number 1 or even the number 2 receiver in 2024. Player number 2, Darion Williamson. A lot of comparisons physically to Hykeem Williams, 6'3", over 200 pounds, can really run, has length, but he's been a guy that just can't stay healthy. If Florida State's going to get to the promised land this next year, whatever guy that it is ends up being number one, hopefully. If it's Williamson, here's the number one thing. Stay healthy. It sounds easier than anything in the world, but it's really not. But as many coaches on the record or off the record will tell you or me or anybody else, your number one asset is your availability. If he doesn't stay healthy, he can't be number one. He has to make every practice, can't be a hint of anything, in my opinion, through spring, because Florida State's coaching staff knows the history here. He's just a guy that's constantly been banged up. That's fair or not, the way it kind of works. So he needs to prove it all the way through spring. Player 3, Malik Benson. He's the transfer, in case you didn't know, from Alabama, can really run, has a lot of speed. But he was inconsistent at Bama. I don't know the backstory there. I don't cover Alabama, but he was a kid that was a big-time recruit. I think he could be the guy at the very least, whether you play him at slot or to the field. I don't know how they want to use him, maybe a little of both. He could take the top off. And if you use him at slot, using like this, shallow cross, throw him a 2-yard pass, he might make the first guy miss and score on a 70-yarder. He's that kind of athlete. But he's only like 6'1". He's not as big as like Darion or Hykeem, etc. Maybe he has the ability to do it in different spots, and he could be a different kind of guy as a number one, meaning just the deep threat. I don't know, but he's going to help. I don't know if a first-year guy transferring in is going to be just like last year, like Keon came in and just obliterated LSU. That'd be great. I'm not expecting that out of him, but he is really talented. Finally, it's Kentron Poitier. I think that the UGA game at least gives you some hope. I know that was a terrible game for Florida State, but he had 4 catches, 84 yards, and this is another bigger receiver that can really run. He's a kid out of Miami. He's a kid that's been through a lot, waiting his turn last year. It's not his fault that Keon Coleman showed up. He probably would have been the number 2 or number 3 guy last year, but at the same time, Keon was there, and that kind of took care of itself. Another fifth-year senior, another opportunity to arise to the occasion. Can he do it? Possibly. We need to see all these things again, kind of like with Darion, in practice. Can you do it over and over again? Can we rely on you? The case for him is pretty simple. All the tools are there, and he's had the moments, and he had the big moments against Georgia. So maybe that'll carry over into spring. So again, those are the 4 that I think have the best chance. You could say Ja'Kai Douglas or somebody else. Please comment on this on YouTube. Let me know what you think. If I miss somebody, or if you think it's just automatically going to be a situation where they're going to have a lot of different guys, I could buy that. And you could also say Kyle Morlock. He's going to be the starting tight end. There's nothing wrong. If he goes out and catches 50 balls, that's okay. You can win. Like 3 different guys are in the 30s at wide receiver, and Kyle has 51 catches for 610 yards and 6 touchdowns. I don't think Mike Norvell or anybody on the staff would be all that disappointed. That'd be pretty good. There's different ways to get it done. I ask again, though, if you think there's going to be a number one, who is it? Was I right at least picking from these 4, etc.? Please comment and kind of go through that, because it's a lot of fun for me to look at it, because I've been trying to figure this out for a while, and I went over the receivers multiple times, but there isn't a clear-cut answer, in my opinion. If you want to comment on that, if you think there is, fire away. I'm curious as to your reasoning besides I just think so. But it's not as easy as it looks, and Florida State's probably just like everybody else, the coaching staff, they're just kind of like, let's see what happens in spring. That's my guess. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit more about the receiving corps and what it takes for them to work, and in conjunction with some other players, coming up here in just a second on Locked On Seminoles. Did you know that even if you have a 401k retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through the 30th of April. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Also, Fire TV. This is something that I use. I've talked about it before on this show. Fire TV is one of the best opportunities for you to save some money on your cable bill. I use it all the time. I use regular channels like YouTube and stuff like that, YouTube TV. It's easy for me, but all that kind of stuff is fun for people without paying the extra money. You know, there's a lot of ways you do it. So if you want to go down that road and spend all that money on cable, that's on you. But with Fire TV, I can watch all the same things, ESPN and all the sports. I can use YouTube. I can use YouTube TV, whatever I want to use through Fire. They also have Fire TV channels. You can just say, Alexa, play Fire TV channels. And it is a bunch of clips and shorts, kind of like a YouTube, where they have sports and different channels that are on there. Their menu is growing all the time, and you can really have a good time with it as well. So check out Fire TV. It's a really good way to go. You can use the stick, or you can actually buy a Fire TV, whatever it is you would like to do. It's a great investment. All right, now let's talk about the opportunities for Florida State beyond the number one receiver situation. You have to have other players complement. And one of the ways you do that, and Florida State has certainly shown it with Toffoli, the running backs catching the football. Does Keziah catch the ball? How much do you get the ball to somebody like Jaylen Lucas, I'll talk about in a second. The receivers are going to be complementary to the running game, but it works in the other direction as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why Jaylen Lucas, the transfer from Indiana University, is important, as well as I'm going to talk a little bit about Keziah, totally different style back, but can be used in similar ways. So let's start with Jaylen. Last year, 34 catches, 247 yards, 7.3 yards per catch, and 2 scores. Now, I ain't going to talk about the rushing stats, but he's a pretty good athlete there too. He's a Louisiana kid, so there's connections. A lot of his staff for Florida State has connections to Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, etc. And he's transferring after 2 years. This is a kid that's 5'9", 170 and is twitchy. You can use him in the slot. You can use him as a running back. You can throw screens to him, kind of like Lawrence Toffoli. Not as big as Lawrence, but it's the same kind of style. And when he makes a guy miss, he can do it pretty impressively. It changes how teams have to play you. Let me give you an example. Let's say that Toffoli and Lucas are on the field at the same time they come out to the huddle, first play of the drive. So nothing's going on. Nothing's opened up. There is no big play, and then you go, no huddle or anything. They're in 2 running backs. Let's say Morlock's the only tight end, so they're in 21. You have no idea as a defensive coordinator, none, where they're going to line up, because Lucas is extremely good in the passing game. He could be at slot. He could be standing next to DJ. He could be all over the place. He could be an up back. They use it in motion. You could run him while the motion behind the running backs, all the new stuff you see in college football. It is a nightmare. Even when he does not touch the football, he can set up a touchdown. If you want number one wide receivers, I get it. Guys that go take the ball off somebody's head, that's great. I do too. Everybody needs that. But if you really want to give those guys the most opportunities, this is how you do it. Running backs that are 3 down players. Run it, can catch, and can block. Keziah, we'll talk about in a second, is the most likely to do that, but Jaylen's a pretty tough kid too. He's not going to just take on a guy at 230 and block all the time, but he'll throw his hat in there. And in the other 2 categories, as a runner and especially as a receiver, he's a guy that can be a pain in the butt. When Florida State uses guys like this, it's for a purpose. He can make plays by himself. But again, Jaylen Lucas can impact the game when he does not even touch the freaking ball. That is annoying. Trust me, I talked to defensive coaches about they hate guys like this. They want to know exactly where you're going to be so they can match their personnel. You can go 4 or 5 wide with him in the offense, or you can be in 2 running backs and 2 tight ends. He can fit anything. That's really difficult for defense coordinators. Now let's switch to Keziah. He's a kid that originally went to Penn State. He played at Cocoa High School. He transferred to Florida State. He's kind of waited his turn. 5'11", about 210. Really athletic kid, has some power behind his pads. And he can catch the football too. Here's a couple of things. 29 carries, 185 yards, and 2 scores last year. Also caught 5 passes for 58 yards and 2 more scores. Again, he's 210, so he's roughly 40 pounds heavier than Jaylen Lucas. Plays downhill. You could put him in the backfield. You could run crossbuck action, throw a screen to one, whatever. He'll catch it. He'll block. Maybe he's the guy they run sweep, give the ball to Jaylen, give the ball to Lawrence, give the ball to Singleton, whatever it is. He can be used a number of ways. Again, versatility. These lineups are going to be annoying. They're not going to replace Jaheim Bell, in my opinion. I just don't see how you can. So I think you'll see a little more like Jaylen Lucas or somebody else in the backfield, 2 guys. And Toffoli, I think, will get the most touches as a running back. But with these different options, they can all catch. They all bring extra versatility that make the other team's defensive coordinator angry before the play and or the drive even starts. That's what you have to do. You have to dictate to them and force them to choose. And then I assume, I don't know for sure, once you get that first down, you go no huddle. Do not let them rotate in new players. Force that linebacker to be on Jaylen Lucas in the slot. You want to play man coverage? Go right ahead. You want to play soft? That's okay. We'll just run the ball. Dictate to them. Make it work. You obviously, they always talk about this. You got to get the first down. Once you do that, you go no huddle. It's straightforward. When you can't rotate linebackers and then you start putting running backs in the slot and throwing screens and short passes to them, it might be a -1. It might just be a 2-yarder, but then it's a 60. They're going to make one of those guys miss. And that's what a Keziah Holmes can do. You can run it on first down, traditional trap play, traditional off tackle, lead draw, whatever. He might catch a swing pass, have a linebacker on him one-on-one. And again, he's 210, but he's a pretty athletic guy. He'll either lower the pads and put it on him, or he can make him miss. All these different opportunities for him make it a dynamic offense. And again, it goes back into what I talked about the lead into the show. Who's the number one receiver? If they're really worried about whatever player, let's say it's Hykeem, I don't know who it's going to be, and they're rotating deep, playing cover 3, playing man underneath maybe, but a lot of deep coverage, you got one guy to beat, and then you're into the middle of the field. When you get guys like this, like a Jaylen Lucas in space, Keziah Holmes, you give somebody else like Toffoli that chance. I mean, Toffoli proved it multiple times over his career already. It's not going to be fun. They can get that number one receiver and they're playing soft. That second level is going to be easier to get into for guys like Keziah. That's a huge deal. Now, before I finish up with this part, we're going to talk about one more guy and then kind of like an overall theme here in just a minute. Realize that this is a truly wide open spring practice for Florida State. And that's a great thing because this makes it fun. As a fan, with Florida State spring practice starting next week, you should be excited because there's all kinds of things like this that are developing. I could talk about the offensive linemen a lot, and I'll briefly talk about that in a second because there's a couple of guys that I think can play multiple spots, and they could also be huge factors in conjunction with how this works in the passing game and the running game. So we're going to talk about that next right here on Locked On Seminoles. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to make it to the next level. Let's go with the Utah State Aggies as they are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised us all with the powerful performance against New Mexico, giving them their first outright Mountain West title in program history. They say, win life, go rogue, and that's exactly what the Aggies have done here. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada, and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, for this last grouping, I don't want to leave the big guys out in any way, shape, or form. I've got a tight end and two big guys up front to talk about because there's a little flexibility. I'm cheating a little bit here. When we look at the opportunities to throw the football, you got to get the quarterback time, right? This last year, Darius Washington stepped in. Robert Scott was hurt a lot. Scott's back. Washington's back, and I'm just completely speculating here. I think there's a chance they'll be the bookends. Byers was the right tackle. He had the most snaps, I believe, of the offensive line and maybe of the entire offense, if I remember correctly. But there's different ways you could do it. I love to see Byers inside or another way to get Scott on the field if he is truly healthy. Again, one way to establish a number one wide receiver is give DJ some time to throw the frickin' football. They didn't do that all the time last year. The O-line was inconsistent, especially in the run game. This year with DJ, who is nowhere near as nimble, especially laterally, as a certain quarterback that has moved on to the NFL, I think it is going to behoove them to figure out the passing protection even more. And you got to run the ball well, too, to get into those situations that are more manageable. DJ can run, but he's just not Jordan Travis. Nothing against him, but Jordan Travis could have played a lot of spots other than quarterback. So maybe it's Washington that plays left guard and something. I don't know, but I'm sure they're going to try different scenarios, if you will. How would this unit work? How would this one work? Does it work better in short yardage? Do we use one of these guys as like an H-back in goal line? Florida State's got a bunch of guys that are seniors, fifth-year seniors, etc. I think it's a little easier now to experiment because they all know they're capable of playing. They just need some kind of chemistry. Last year, they were just snake bitten. I mean, Mo was hurt a lot. Obviously, Robert was hurt, etc. Byers played the most snaps, but for the most part, just about everybody else has got hurt at some point and missed time. Number one, that can't happen. Number two, who's the best combination that gives you a team unit? I think there's a really good chance Scott ends up in the lineup because he's arguably the most physically gifted guy up front. You could at least make the argument. How does that work out? Just something to think about because Florida State needs that ability to be able to be consistent up front, unlike last year. And I know I bring this up a lot. You can't have another game like Clemson where you found a way to win with the big defensive play and all that. Clemson shot itself in the foot a few times, but they had 22 rushing yards in that game. They will probably not win another game like that in the next 25 years, a key road game with 22 yards rushing. That is pathetic. The way you do it is consistency up front. You don't have negative plays and guys running scot-free. Can't happen. So if that's something to think about moving forward, and that'll set up all the opportunities to throw down the field to Darion Williamson, Poitier, to Hykeem Williams, whatever it is, whoever that player is, you got to have pass protection. That leaves with one parting shot, and I've always thought that tight ends were undervalued in a lot of ways. The NFL has finally kind of figured it out, and different guys that are becoming just more spectacular all the time. Well, they lost Jaheim, but that doesn't mean you can't have other guys step up. They have like Jackson West. Can he block? Can he be the 12 personal guys and H-back, etc.? I think it's pretty safe to say Kyle Morlock is going to be your key tight end. But somebody has to develop there beyond Kyle. Let's start with that. And then two, this is the important thing. There's no reason Kyle shouldn't catch 25 balls at minimum this next season. He's a darn good football player. He's not going to be overshadowed by Jaheim because he's not here anymore. Point blank. Third downs, goal line, H-back. I don't know if he's going to be a dominant blocker. I don't know. He needs to get better at it. It's not like he's terrible by any means, but if he wants to play in the NFL, that would be the thing that I would advise. But he also needs to be a money ball guy. Play action off the same stuff he ran down the field, as old as it gets. But when you get into the top or into the 5-yard line area, you got to sell out for the run. If you go play action, you're guessing if you don't. And good luck to you if they walk in the end zone and you're in the defensive meeting next week. So a guy like Morlock, as athletic as he is, he can get out in the flat after just bumping the defensive end or the outside linebacker, the safety, whatever. He should have some easy opportunities like that. We just went over all these running backs. They're dynamic. They're in good shape. And there's other guys. I didn't even mention all the running backs. Didn't come close. That's going to help him pad his stats. And it's another way, if they don't end up having a true number one, to have a big play guy. And if they do, he's even going to be more likely to be one-on-one with somebody that can't hold up with him as safety or linebacker. That makes it easy. I think you're going to see Morlock make a lot of plays. So we'll see how that goes, but kind of anxious to see spring practice, who ends up being the number one receiver for Florida State, and across the board, which guys end up starting on the O-line, etc. It's going to be a lot of fun. That gets started next week for the Florida State Seminoles. Please like and share this podcast, and above all else, make sure that you comment. Curious what everybody thinks about the opportunities for a receiver to be a number one. Will there be? I don't know. There doesn't automatically have to be a number one wide receiver for the Noles. I'm just assuming there will be. Doesn't guarantee anything. So with that, everybody, once again, please like and subscribe and have a good day.